Morning, Dr. Bressman. Okay, so we're going to now go into Ois Test of the Maamar. We've gone through yesterday the 3 stages of the service of Hashem, and how the goal is to be Tzivus Hashem, to bring the truth of Hashem into the world, and the truth of Atzilus should be here revealed, as will happen when Mashiach will come. And now the Rebbe is going to talk about what Hashem gives us to get the job done. The bizbuz ha'otzros. Hashem gives away the treasure houses. Just like the king gives away the treasure houses to win the war, so to the Eibishter, he gives us the treasure houses for us to win our own personal war. What's the treasure houses? So let's continue on over here on page Mem Gimel, Ois Tes. V'hinei b'shvil avos hatzava shetzrichim l'chachmim nagan l'atzchei tchil b'efen shos kafia v'ad sheboim gam b'efen shos hapcha tzarich liyazim bizbuz ha'otzros. In order to win the war, to overcome the enemy, first to at least subdue him, eskafia, and then to transform him. So what does Hashem give us? Hashem gives us the storage houses, these treasures. What does this mean? The Rebbe Marash says that the attribute of victory is aroused, especially when there is an opposition. How can we say there's anything that opposes Hashem? Who could stand against Hashem, that Hashem needs to be victorious over them? What does it mean? Hashem has this attribute of victory as if there's someone opposing him. There is no one else. There's nothing else. And then Rashi explains, so the Rashi explains, Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker. What's Netzach Yisrael lo yishaker mean? This is a pasuk which was said by Shmuel Hanavi when Shmuel Hanavi was told by Hashem to take away the monarchy from King Shaul to give it to David. So Shaul begged Shmuel to keep him as the king, and Shmuel turns away and he grabs Shmuel's clothing and it rips. And Shmuel responds to Shaul and he says, God has taken away the monarchy from you. And this year, asking me to change my mind, he says, the literal translation, way it's usually translated, is the eternal one of Israel will not lie and will not change, because he's not a person who changes. That's what the simple meaning of the verse is. Netzach Yisrael, the eternal one of Israel. But the word Netzach is related to the word Netzach, victory. So the Rebbe Marash says, when you want to talk about victory for Hashem, there's no one that opposes Hashem. So what's the meaning of victory for Hashem? And victory for Hashem is Netzach Yisrael. It's a victory of the Jewish people. Netzach Yisrael. When we talk about God's victory, we're talking about the victory of the Jewish people. When there are those who go against the Jewish people, then there is in Shemayim, in heaven, there is aroused this attribute of victory. And concerning this, the Torah says, the eternal one of Israel, or the victorious one of Israel, if you will, does not lie. He's not a person who changes. So, just like the pasuk is saying, God is not a person who changes his mind, it's also saying something else. The source of victory, where is the attribute of victory rooted? Victory comes from the place, so to speak, within Hashem that is beyond a human being. Of course, there's nothing in God that's similar to a human being. However, we know that Hashem created man. He said, let us make man in our image. So there's something, as we learned earlier in the Maamar about the spheres, there is something in godliness that Hashem creates, contracts himself to to project to the world through the various spheres, there is something that is man-like. As it says in the Torah, on the image of the throne, there's the image of man. What's the meaning of the image of man? It means it's a way Hashem contracted his light to project in various different ways, just like a human soul is made of 10 attributes. So where does victory come from? Victory comes from the place which is beyond the level of man. Victory comes from essence. Beyond the man on the throne. And that's why the victory is in a way that there are no calculations. And therefore Hashem gives everything away. And just like by a human king, he puts his life in danger. So too, we find a parallel for this in Shemayim, as we shall see what that means in Shemayim. This is a level beyond all calculations, and there are various angels and various, how can I say this? There are various reasons why these are treasure houses which are never revealed. And there's a system of how Hashem organized the entire spiritual cosmos, and that's why these things aren't shown and aren't revealed. But yet, to win the war, Hashem does take this all out. And the Friedrich explains, there are two methods of serving Hashem, two levels of serving Hashem. There is a skafia and there's a sabcha. There's subduing the enemy, there's transforming him. In the skafia, Iskafi means that there's an opposition, you just win him. God helps you and you win. In the Maamar, the Rebbe speaks about Hashem giving away the storage houses of treasures in heaven, and he then immediately begins talking about this treasure house of fear of heaven. It says in the Torah that God has no treasure except for the fear of heaven. Now, where is the fear of heaven? Where does that come from? Where is God's? It says in Chassidus that just like a king amasses treasures from conquering other countries, so too, if we're talking about God's treasure house, what does God amass from other things? He has within us this treasure of fear of Hashem, this fear of heaven. We have within us this treasure house of fear of heaven, which is the Yechidah, the deepest part of the soul. And the Eibishter also has the inner secrets of the Torah, the inner dimension of Torah, which is also his treasure house. So there's a treasure house within us, and there's also a treasure house within him. Parallel to this, also emphasized in the Maamar that was said on Friday night, these two Maamarim, they complement each other. And that Maamar also spoke about how there is the revelation of the inner dimension of Torah. That's also God's treasure house. There's parts of Torah that were never revealed before. So there is, it seems, a symbiotic relationship between our treasure, our innermost part of our soul, our ability to have real reverence for Hashem when it counts, to overcome obstacles which are really challenging, to say this is right and this is wrong when we're really put against the wall. And the treasure house of the inner dimension of Torah. When Hashem reveals to us the Yechidah of Torah, the deepest part of Torah, so as the Zohar says, there are three things which are bound to each other, and we went to the Maamar Chanukah. When there's a revelation of the innermost part of Torah, that allows us to reveal the innermost part of our neshama. So in order to win the war, so Hashem wants us to bring out our treasure house. What's our treasure house? Our treasure house is Yechidah. Also emphasized in the Maamar of Shabbos is the idea of the king throwing his life aside. What's the king throwing his life aside? It seems the king throwing his life aside in the analog is how Hashem chooses to rest with us in the exile. This year, the Rebbe spoke about this, in 1961. The Rebbe also spoke a lot about the idea of going on a mission, of going to a new city where there is no Yiddishkeit that's celebrated there, and to share Torah mitzvahs there. And it seems that this is the parallel in our lives of throwing your life aside, throwing your spiritual life aside. Just like Hashem, so to speak, chooses to reside in a place which is unholy. Hashem decides to bring his Shekhinah to a place of Bavel. So to the Eibishter asks a Jew to go to an unfriendly and unholy environment, to spread the Torah and to reveal Hashem's presence in that unholy and unfriendly environment. Anyway, so the treasure house within us is this Yireh Shamayim, is a level of Yechidah, and we need this to overcome the obstacle. We need this to even to subdue the enemy, even to win, even externally. We need to have this. But the goal is not just that we should subdue the enemy. Rather, the goal is to transform him. There should not be any enemy at all. Just like we said before about Tzivas Havaya, that the goal is that there should be the revelation of the truth of Hashem in this world. The truth of Atzilus should be completely manifest here. So, in our service of Hashem, there's something that we could do, as we learned yesterday, that will bring that about. It's hapcha, transforming the evil, which in general is something which is reserved to it for a tzaddik. But as we learned yesterday, there's something that, and we'll learn from today, there's something that has a lot of relevance to us as well. This, as Rebbe Rash explains, this is the difference between the Beinani and the tzaddik. The way a Beinani serves Hashem is just to subdue the evil. I don't know if you saw the class I gave last night about the riddle of the 3 days. I suggest you watch it. It's really a powerful idea of how we leave Mitzrayim. We go out of Mitzrayim, and we tell the party, why are you going out of Mitzrayim? We're just going for 3 days. We're just leaving for 3 days. The message is, winning doesn't mean that you get rid of evil completely. Winning means that you're running away from something in yourself that wants to go back. That's a skafia. And you need Hashem's assistance to do that. The author says in Tanya, your whole life could be a skaf. You're always running away. You're always fighting. You're always stealing for his base. That's the Aveda. That's what Hashem puts us in this world for. There is such a thing as a skafia. That's one kind of war. Then there is a tzaddik, whose tzaddik is not called someone who is serving Hashem. A tzaddik is called the servant of Hashem. Why is he called the servant of Hashem? Because he's done his job already. He has completely eradicated any vestige of any attraction to anything unholy. He only has purity in him. Only the neshama is shining completely. That's what a tzaddik means. A tzaddik means that the neshama is revealed. The neshama is manifest. That's the level of a tzaddik, and that's what will happen when Mashiach will come. What does this mean for us now in Golus as well? What are we talking about? Okay, so to explain this, the Rebbe begins discussing the pasuk Tzidkas Prezene B'Yisrael. This pasuk is in the Haftarah Parshas Beshalach, and the pasuk on the surface is saying that God did a tzedakah, God did a kindness to the Jewish people. What was the kindness He did for us? Pir Zainai. What's Pir Zainai mean? We're able to walk around freely. Before the war of Devaira and Barak, there was impossible. The Jews were attacked when the Torah says when they went to draw water. And now, Tzidkas Persein Yisrael, we can walk around openly. In a similar way, when Mashiach will come, it says, Prazes Tevshu Shalayim, we'll go back to Jerusalem. Prazes, be open walled. We won't need to fortify ourselves. Be open and free, and we'll be secure without any worry at all. There's another translation of Prazes. The Gemara says that if you change the letter Resh for Zion, and that word Pizreinoi, you have a different translation. What does that mean? Tzidkas Pizreinoi B'Yisrael. That pasuk means that God did a kindness to the Jewish people by scattering them among all nations. He scatters Jewish people among all nations, and by scattering them, this is at tzedakah. Why is it at tzedakah? So the Friedrich Rebbe explains this Maamar. It's interesting. The Friedrich Rebbe said this Maamar by the Rebbe's Shevat Brachas, and again, this theme is in Basi Lagani. all the Rebbeim have a Maamar on this theme, on this pasuk, Tzidkas B'Shem Yisrael. And the theme of the Maamar is, one of the themes of the Maamar is how there are some places where you can't keep Torah mitzvahs, and there are other places you can keep Torah mitzvahs. And the Jewish people keep Torah mitzvahs in one place. They give strength to other Jewish people who have the decrees against them. And in a similar way, there are some people which are able to do mitzvahs more easily because the Yetzer Hara doesn't bother them in certain areas. And there are the Jews that they're challenged in those very same areas. And we're all connected to each other, and how we're all one body. And when you do your mission and you're in Yonim, what's not a challenge for you, what you're able to do freely, that gives strength to those who have challenges in those areas. So, and this is connected to what the simple meaning of the Gemara. The Gemara says that that God did kindness to Jewish people by scattering us among all nations. Why is this kindness? It's kindness because if a Haman will arise and try to kill us all, he can't, because we're all over the place. But in that year of 1961, when Rebbe shared this idea, Rebbe also spoke about the idea of shlichus, but going out to, as mentioned before, going out to a new place where there isn't Torah mitzvahs, Tzidkas B'Shem Yisrael, as the Talmud says that one of you will be exiled to a place called Barbaria, and one of you will be exiled to a place called Sarmatia. And why are you going there? So Chassidus says you're going there because there's sparks of holiness you need to go to elevate. There's someone there, there's something there that you uniquely are assigned for with your soul. That's why you're there. You think you went there because of this reason, because of that reason, but you're there, as it says in Hayom Yom, where you are. God decides what you do there, you decide. So that's Tzidkas B'Shem Yisrael. So these are the two translations of Pirs Reining, either being open or being spread out. The idea of being open is similar to the theme that we learned earlier on in the Maamar about winning the war completely, transformation. That the goal is the king fights the war not because he wants to accomplish something specific, but rather the king's desire has to be fulfilled. Nothing could stop what the king wants. The king has to have absolute and total victory. That's one kind of war. Then there's a war because of something, a certain gain that you want to accomplish. There's something specific that has to be accomplished. So there's tzidkas pirzrein. There's a reason why Hashem sends a person to accomplish something. There's something specific that has to be accomplished. Then there's a whole different kind of thing that in this whole different kind of dimension in the war, and that is that a Jew has to be devoted to Hashem without any limitation. That there's no limit. The Rebbe told one shliach in a private audience that they explained to him what the idea of a shlichus means. I don't think I shared this with you. The Rebbe told him, asked him how many Jews there are in the city. He told the Rebbe a figure of how many Jews there were in the city, and the Rebbe said, so there's this amount of Jews. Let's say there's this amount of children. I'm not quoting exactly. This is what I remember. Someone else quoted, so could be. I'm sure it's not exactly accurate. The Rebbe said if there are 19,000 children, and you've succeeded in bringing 18,999 into your school, so you've done a lot. You'll have a great Gan Eden, amazing Gan Eden, incredible. No one will have any complaints against you. You ate, but you didn't do your mission. You didn't do your mission. The idea of Pirzayne means that everything matters. Everything matters. In the Fabrengen Shevat, the Rebbe spoke about, I don't know what year it was, the Rebbe spoke about the Friedrich Rebbe, how the Friedrich Rebbe would ask very tall demands of people on completely divergent areas of life. The Friedrich Rebbe asks, Michal Mardechai, I want you to go teach Torah underground in this city in Russia. Go teach Torah to these children. And then it says, Yonatan, I want you to daven only for 3.5 hours a day. Why can't you daven for 4? Daven for 4 hours. What's 3.5? You said Shema for 3.5 hours. Why not 4? So there's a whole different kind of person that's interested in Torah study in this small little town, to someone who cares that a person's able to exert themselves in prayer to another level, someone's able to reach a higher level of devotion to Hashem. And so why was the Friedrich Rebbe asking all these things equally? Why did it all matter to him equally? And the Rebbe said, because for the Friedrich Rebbe, there's the essence of the soul was revealed. And from the perspective of the netzach, of the essence of the soul, it all matters. It all matters equally. It all matters infinitely. And we're going to see now how this is related to the Mitzvah Hashem. I don't get to it today. This is related to the famous Maamar, the Rebbe Rashab, Maamar of going out of Kol Yitz Chos David, the war. The Rebbe Rashab speaks about how there's two generations after him. Really very prophetic discourse. The Rebbe said is very prophetic discourse. That there's two different kinds of war, as we shall see in this Maamar, which are also parallel to these different kinds of scenarios. One where you're fighting because of some specific objective, and one is because there has to be total victory. Hashem's glory has to fill the whole world. There can't be any place where Hashem is not revealed. Let's continue now on page Mem Daled in the bottom of the page. These are the two meanings of this pasuk. The pasuk means that we will be free. Mashiach will come, and Jerusalem will not need any walls. Gam lashon pizur, and also means to be scattered around. The Gemara says that God did kindness to Jewish people by scattering them to all nations. The fact that these two explanations are brought in the same word, and the same word of the Torah, that indicates that they're connected and they're one. How will we arrive at Jerusalem and not need any walls? The way we're going to get there is by every one of us being scattered to where we need to go. Yonathan's going to go over there to some prison in Atlanta, and to some Jew over there into the rural Georgia. And David LaBelle is going to be exiled next week to the Valley, Chas v'Shalom, hopefully in Jerusalem. We're getting married. It's not exile. Okay. Anyways, so we're all going to different places. And by Hashem putting us all these different places, this will bring us to the time when Jerusalem will not need to be walled. It's connected. How are we going to get there? We're getting there by Hashem putting us all different places. What's the connection? Rebbe explains. The appears of the Yisrael ben Umas from Merazal, go Yisrael ben Umas, it says that the only reason why Hashem scatters the Jewish people among all nations is in order that there should be more people converting to Judaism. Now, there aren't that many converts that would make our exile to be worth it. You do have Pirush B'Zeh. What does this mean? Doesn't just mean only converts in a simple sense. The amount of converts is not commensurate to the amount of pain Jewish people had throughout their long exile. What is the intent then? Rather, we're talking about the sparks of holiness, which are called Gentiles. Why are they called Gentiles? They're called converts. Why are they called converts? Because at first these sparks of holiness are in physical things in those countries in which we are exiled. Bekasha ish so is dina evitzracham gam tzrach gashim shabbos medusha maybe in achila shras dam bas sorry kach achila hi evidas khulu as a mates is in its sedusha mitachas mishos asar so is medina magayre malay le shosh makere ba vukol shtav guf malkos aus closing in the sholo love is about the when what we're talking about over here, when the Gemara says we're scattered to make converts, what it means is we need to convert these sparks of holiness, which are found in all kinds of physical things, in all the countries in where the Jewish people are exiled. One Jew is exiled to Barbaria, one Jew is exiled to Samtaria. And when one Jew is involved in the matters, in the things of that country, for his own personal needs, his physical needs, but he uses those things for holiness, he eats. When you eat, the food becomes part of your flesh and blood. And with the power of that food, you serve Hashem. Then what happens, you extricate that spark of holiness from the dominion of the minister of that country. Every country has a ministering angel, and the spark of holiness was exiled in the dominion of that ministering angel of that country. And when you take that hamburger and you eat it for the sake of Hashem, you are extricating that spark of holiness and bringing it to Hashem, which means to cleave to the king himself. The spark of holiness, which was previously darkened and exiled, And now it's cleaving to Hashem. So what is that about? That's about we're sent to exile for a mission. We're sent to exile to accomplish an objective. That's the first idea. Iskafia. You have to accomplish something. So Hashem puts you in a certain place to get that specific job done. There's a calculation there. There's a calculation. Who's going to go? And you see from the language of the Maamar how there's a calculation, because the Maamar says it's not worth it to do this for a certain amount of converts. It must mean we're talking about another objective. So you see from the language that we're talking about something that has basis in logic. How we're not talking about the king's victory and everything and everywhere. We're talking about we want to bring Mashiach. We want to accomplish that God's presence should fill the earth. Therefore, we have to send Yankel to here and Shmerel to there and Laser to there. And that accomplishes and this will cause that Mashiach will come and there won't be any need for a wall. In other Maamar, the Rebbe speaks about there won't be a need for a wall also means there is no wall, meaning that the holiness, as Gemara says, the holiness of Jerusalem will spread to all of Israel, and the holiness of Israel will spread to all of the world. And how is that accomplished? It's accomplished because Yankel's in there and Shmerel's there, and that's how they make that happen. This is all done in a way of a war, and all the treasure houses are given for this purpose. It sounds like that the treasure houses are given just for the objective that needs to be accomplished in battle. But I said before that the objective in the war is something that you only give some things for. You don't just let everything go. So there's two Maamarim. There's Maamar of Friday night and Maamar Motzei Shabbos, and there's different elements that are emphasized in each Maamar. We'll see more about this on Sunday, but there is definitely a mention over here how just for the sake of your doing your specific mission, for your objective, is also Hashem gives you infinitely. That's true too. But in the Maamar Friday night, the Rebbe connects us specifically with the idea of going beyond logic and reason, the idea of total victory, the idea of how the previous Rebbe, because everything matters to him, therefore there are no things which are more important or less important. Okay, do I want to confuse you with these two Maamarim? No, I don't. But let's just give a conclusion of what we learned over here today. We learned today like this, that the Eibusher scatters us among all nations. And why does he do this? He does this because he wants to bring Mashiach. The scattering of us among all nations is in order that God's presence should be revealed everywhere, that Jerusalem will have no walls, that there won't be anything any opposition, won't be anything negative. And in order for us to win this war, Hashem gives us incredible revelation of godliness, and that triggers and touches within us this strength that we're able to get our job done wherever we are, whatever we need to do. But the objective isn't just that you should win against Yetzer Hara today, the 3-day thing. The objective is a Mashiach shall come. Netzach Yisrael, that's the meaning of God's victory. God's victory isn't about him winning against anyone. There's no one that can stand against God. Rather, it's about the Jewish people's victory. Our victory is God's victory, and God invests, so to speak, his very core in our victory. He gives away all of his treasures so we should win this war. So that means that Beryl Klein has his challenges, and Moshe Levin has his challenges, and we're all in different places, in all different circumstances. And we'll all be in the same room, not just we're in Georgia. We'll all be in the same room in all different places. And the Eibusher gives it all away because we have something that needs to get accomplished wherever we are. And if there's any questions or comments?
I feel like we left on kind of a downer. This whole like.
All right, so I'll tell you like this.
You do 99% of your mission, but like, oh, sorry, gotta go back down. Like, come on.
There was an Israeli paratrooper. He goes up on the plane, and the sergeant says, "Everybody jump off the plane, count to 5, and pull your cord. If it doesn't work, count to 5 again, then pull your cord. And don't worry, this is going to work. And down when you hit the ground, there'll be a bus take you all back to the base. So laser jumps off the plane. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nothing. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Nothing again. We know what he says. There's not going to be a bus either. Won't be any bus. There's going to be a bus. We're going to get home. Shir's going to come. It's going to happen today. And we got and Abish is invested in you and you winning. That's what they're telling us. This is such an upbeat message they're saying over here. We're going to win the war. Pull the cord. The parachute's going to open. Have a good Shabbos, Maamar, Shabbos, Menachem Mendel, Shabbos, Dr. Brespin, Shabbos, Yonatan, Shabbos, David, Shabbos, Jeff, and Shabbos, Rebel.
Yeah, the reward is great faith. With that, you can do anything. We're good.
Great faith? What do you mean the word is great faith? What are you referring to?
I'm saying that building great faith among the Jewish people is the greatest reward that God can ever give us. Because with that, we can go to all these crazy countries in the world, and we've done this. I mean, Chabad is unbelievable. You know, we've gone into the White House and everything else. We go there with open arms and good faith. You know, we're not worried about our beards and our girdles and stuff like that. And that's what it takes. It gives faith to everybody. It's very clear.
Thank you, Dr. Brespin.
Okay.
Good Shabbos.